Good morning to everyone out there. My name is Marion Greer. I serve on a number of committees here, and I welcome you today. Whether you've been with us on Sundays for a long time or are visiting for the first time today, we welcome you to our service. This congregation is a theologically diverse religious community with participation open to all who agree to live into our principles, mission, and values. We are a welcoming congregation to people of all sexual orientations and gender identities, races, ethnicities, and abilities, and we unconditionally welcome you as your full, authentic self to our community of caring and commitment to grow as spiritual and moral beings. Our congregational mission is to strengthen our connections to one another and our planet by enlivening minds and spirits, building community through liberating love, and advocating fiercely for justice. It is now a custom in our congregation to acknowledge visitors and newcomers. If it is your first time here, would you mind raising your hand so we can all acknowledge you? Thank you and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. All are invited to join us for coffee after the service today. New and newer folks are invited to grab one of these green mugs located inside the door of our fellowship hall so we can easily spot you and speak to you during our coffee hour. You are also welcome to fill out one of the green cards that can be found in the backs of the pews so we can keep in touch with you. Simply drop that card in the offering basket or in the box at the welcome table in the foyer. Please know that whatever your religious history, whatever your personal theology, all people of goodwill are welcome here. Your presence makes us better. Your presence makes us whole. Our service will now begin.
Good morning. I'm Ken Elder, and I'm pleased to be your worship associate today. From the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide, Reverend Erica Hewitt says, "Worship is a multisensory experience in which something greater is created. We are all participants." Reverend Jacob Trapp says, "To worship is to work with dedication and with skill. It is to pause from work and listen to a strain of music. To worship is to sing with the singing beauty of the earth. It is to listen through a storm to the still small voice within. Worship is the mystery within us, reaching out to the mystery beyond. It is an inarticulate silence, yearning to speak. It is the window of the moment, open to the sky of the eternal. May each of us find and activate the light within us, and may we bring forth that interior voice that is yearning to speak. The world needs the inspired light and voice within each of us. May we joyfully fulfill that need." We now acknowledge our sacred space here with the lighting of the chalice.
Good morning, Goof. I'm the Reverend Chris Hockman, so happy to see you all here on this very toasty morning. Before our call to worship, I would like to give a big thank you for anyone and everyone who participated in the memorial service for Christian Elser yesterday afternoon. From the choir to Dionisio to Mary Margaret, who arranged a bunch of volunteers who put on such a wonderful reception and helped put together a wonderful service. I am so proud to be your minister, and Christian's family was very touched. Our call to worship this morning is a poem called Kindness by Naomi Shihab Nye. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between regions of kindness. How you ride and ride thinking the bus will never stop, the passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the person in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been longing for," and then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. Come, let us worship together. Please rise in body or spirit to sing.
Good morning. I'm David Funderburk. I'm the Director of Religious Education here at Goof. And after the story today, any children or youth that would like to come downstairs to the RE Commons to do some religious education activities with me are welcome. For parents, if your kids are going downstairs, we will all be together in the RE Commons, so you will, after the service to pick them up, you go all the way down the hall and down the stairwell at the end of the hallway and listen for the sound of voices downstairs, and you can find us there. So I welcome any children or youth or anyone of any age who would like to come up closer to hear the story, to sit on the floor or in the front pews. Welcome. So the theme for today's service is compassion. So I found a book for you today called I Am Love, a Book of Compassion by Susan Verde with art by Peter H. Reynolds. I don't have a slide for this one, but it says the dedication says, "This book is my love letter to the world, as each one of us is worthy of love in all its forms and expressions. And we are all capable of adding light to the world when we listen to our hearts and choose love." When I see someone going through a storm, of hurt and unfairness, of anger and sadness, when the sun disappears and the skies grow dark, and I see there is fear, I ask myself, what can I do to help let the light back in? I put my hands on my heart and listen. And that is where I find the answer. I have compassion. I act with tenderness. I am love. I can listen and not say a word. I can be there. Love is being present. I can hug and hold and say, everything will be all right. Love is comfort. I can speak softly and choose my words and actions carefully. Love is gentle. I can give thanks for all I have and I'm able to share. Love is gratitude. I can keep my mind and body safe and healthy. Love is taking care of me. I can express what's important to me. Love is creative. I can know that no one is perfect. Love is understanding. I can do my best to make things better when something is wrong. Love is effort. I can celebrate those I've loved before. Love is remembering. I can find goodness in a kind word, a helping hand, or a shared smile. Love is tiny gestures. I can breathe in the air that the whole world shares.
and know all creatures are made from the very same stardust. Love is connection. When the clouds roll in for others and for me, I know now there is something I can do. I can let my heart lead the way. I am love. You are love. We are love. And with love, we will weather the storm and light up the sky together. Thank you for listening today. So please, let me get ahead of you and I will lead you downstairs and show you where to go.
Our congregation is entirely self-governed by a democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are now invited to sow generous seeds of blessing into the fertile soil of this beloved community. Together, we all enjoy the bountiful harvest of increase. The ushers will now come among you to accept your gifts. Thank you. In our community, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person in this community has value. Each person's experience matters. We share our sorrows with one another today, knowing that sorrow comes into each person's life, knowing that together we offer comfort. We also share our joys with one another, knowing too that joy comes into all our lives, knowing that together our voices can rise in a chorus of celebration. Our first item is by Alan Weeks, and I think this is a sorrow. It is with some considerable sadness that I note the passing of Randy Keeler, draft resistor, war resistor, tax resistor, and for a few hours, in the wake of an anti-nuclear protest, my cellmate. He was a good person who was instrumental in getting the Pentagon Papers published and thus raising public awareness of the horror of that unnecessary war which most Americans now alive never lived through. Now, more than ever, America needs more people of conscience like him. This is definitely a joy. Congrats to Jesse and Kay Meisner, who just got married. So,
That's Jessica and KJ.
oh, Jessica and KJ.
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, excuse me. All right. This one is by Linda Mattern. Charlie and Betsy Smith's son, Brendan, was taken to St. Francis Hospital last night. He had a heart attack and he is in very serious condition. Please send healing thoughts and energy. Okay. My husband, Ron, and I celebrated 54 years of marriage on August 1st. We are so grateful. By Linda Mattern. And we have two items here by Linda Molnar. Please light a candle of concern for my son who is seriously ill. Rebecca Landry has a new job at the University of Kentucky, Lexington. Wish this brave lady good luck. All right.
Reba Landry.
Reba Landry. Okay. Thank you. And this last one is by Lori and Walter. Please keep Carol Lavash in your thoughts. She fell this week on her way to a workout and fractured her hip. She is out of dancing commission for several months. Calls and cards are welcome. We will light a final candle representing all of the joys and sorrows present in our hearts that yet may remain unspoken. Let us use the next few moments of silence as we prepare our minds and hearts to receive the meditation message. I said to the sun, "Tell me about the Big Bang." The sun said, "It hurts to become. It hurts to become." And that was by Andrea Gibson. This meditation prayer is by Reverend Jamie Yandel. We are not just flesh and bone, we have stardust in our veins, a reminder that we carry within us the planets that align in our hearts. May we show up for one another and show up for ourselves in the process. And remember, we are divinity incarnate. May we learn to lean into that pure and true source in each other more willingly and with a love that will not abandon us, a love that will sustain us for the many hard days that have passed and those yet to come. We are stardust animated. Who or what is doing the animating? Please remain seated for our meditation hymn number 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness.
I'm going to start with a reading today, which is the basis of the sermon. It's from the work of Karen Armstrong, who is the author of numerous books on comparative religion and religious affairs. In 2008, she won the TED Prize, and that's TED of TED Talk fame. Along with the cash prize, she was granted a wish. She asked the TED organization to help her assemble the Charter for Compassion, a document that could be deployed by religious and other leaders to work together for peace. The charter was launched the following year after being crafted by input from people all over the world and finalized by a group of religious leaders and thinkers. So this reading is from the preface to her book called 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life. One of the chief tasks of our time must surely be to build a global community in which all peoples can live together in mutual respect, yet religion, which should be making a major contribution, is seen as part of the problem. All faiths must insist that compassion is the test of true spirituality and that it brings us into relation with the transcendence we call God, Brahman, Nirvana, or Tao. Each has formulated its own version of what is sometimes called the Golden Rule: do not treat others as you would not like them to treat you. Or, in its more positive form, always treat others as you would wish to be treated yourself. Further, they all insist that you cannot confine your benevolence to your own group. You must have concern for everybody, even your enemies. Yet sadly, we hear little about compassion these days. I have lost count of the number of times I have jumped into a London taxi, and when the cabbie asks how I make a living, have been informed categorically that religion has been the cause of all the major wars in history. In fact, the causes of conflict are usually greed, envy, and ambition. But in an effort to sanitize them, these self-serving emotions have often been cloaked in religious rhetoric. There has been much flagrant abuse of religion in recent years. Terrorists have used their faith to justify atrocities that violate its most sacred values. In the Roman Catholic Church, popes and bishops have ignored the suffering of countless women and children by turning a blind eye to the sexual abuse committed by their priests. Some religious leaders seem to behave like secular politicians, singing the praises of their own denomination and decrying their rivals with scant regard for charity. In their public pronouncements, they rarely speak of compassion, but focus instead on such secondary matters as sexual practices, the ordination of women, or abstruse doctrinal definitions, implying that a correct stance on these issues, rather than the Golden Rule, is the criterion of true faith. Yet it is hard to think of a time when the compassionate voice of religion has been so sorely needed. Our world is dangerously polarized. There is a worrying imbalance of power and wealth, and as a result, a growing rage, malaise, alienation, and humiliation that have erupted in terrorist activities and endanger us all. We are engaged in wars that we seem unable to either end or to win. Disputes that were secular in origin, such as the Arab-Israeli conflict, have been allowed to fester and become holy. And once they have been sacralized, positions tend to harden and become resistant to pragmatic solutions. And yet, at the same time, we are bound together more closely than ever before through the electronic media. Suffering and want are no longer confined to distant, disadvantaged parts of the globe. When stocks plummet in one country, there is a domino effect in markets all over the world. What happens today in Gaza or Afghanistan is now likely to have repercussions tomorrow in London or New York. We all face the terrifying possibility of environmental catastrophe. In a world in which small groups will increasingly have powers of destruction, hitherto confined to the nation state, it has become imperative to apply the Golden Rule globally, ensuring that all peoples are treated as we would wish to be treated ourselves. If our religious and ethical traditions fail to address this challenge, they will fail the test of our time. So Karen Armstrong has said the healing of the world is possible through the practice of compassion. It's yet another optimistic, rather audacious, love-centered activity that the cynic would say is totally unrealistic. The not-so-cynical would call it the act of spreading the culture of compassion through the world, a really difficult thing, but also very necessary because of the state of our world today, and pretty obviously what we're doing now is not working. So first, let's look at what compassion means, because there's a lot of misunderstanding around the word. Compassion can be defined as a feeling of distress at the suffering of another and a desire to alleviate the suffering. The root of the word compassion means to suffer with. Although the suffering is not mine, I choose to feel it like it is mine, and I feel it so intensely that I feel compelled to do something about it. I mean, that's some really powerful stuff right there, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart. This idea that we should shift our focus, our religious focus, our secular focus, our ethical focus, to putting the treatment of others first. Armstrong has said religious doctrine isn't as important here. How we behave is. We need to implement the golden rule globally so that we treat all people, all nations, as we would wish to be treated ourselves. Otherwise, our world is simply not viable. This is the real test of spirituality, she says. So you can see this sense of urgency here going on. She says it's compassion that takes us beyond the prison of ego and selfishness and greed, and enables us to be our best selves and be closest to the divine. That's the end quote. So I imagine many of us, including myself, have done serious time in the prison of ego. Anybody else been incarcerated by ego here? Okay. I have too. Buddhism actually teaches us that it's our egos that get us into trouble and create a lot of self-inflicted misery. And compassion is a natural antidote and a way to liberate ourselves from that prison. The control, the dominance of our egos, our self-centeredness can be counteracted by focusing on the other and offering compassion. Another cool thing that Karen Armstrong has said is that we must dethrone ourselves from the center of our world to put another there. I mean, that's a really powerful and challenging image, isn't it? It kind of encouraged me to visualize this, my throne at the center of the world, and what my throne might look like. I mean, if you're going to dethrone yourself, you have to know what your throne looks like, right? So my personal throne in the center of the world is a really comfortable chair. It's actually a lazy boy, so I can put my feet up. And from my throne, I also have a super-powered remote control. And when I see something I don't like, I can simply flip the channel. I can flip through all the world's channels, and I can judge everything that doesn't please me. I can condemn everyone who hurt or even has just irritated me. And I can click right past all the pain and suffering of others because, it's really not my problem. Why should anyone give up such an awesome throne? But, there is a reason. Compassion is that reason. It requires me to leave my luxurious throne and allow others to rest there for a while, put their feet up. And I have to relinquish my beloved remote control. And without that remote control to click by, I'll have to experience some pain of the other. And that's what's going to make me actually take action to make that pain stop. So if you think of compassion as this weak and mushy, wimpy thing, or something like about pity, it's really not. Compassion is actually a very courageous act. I mean, taking on someone else's pain, that is just not easy, and that's nothing anyone really looks forward to. And I think that's one of the reasons we often hold back on our compassionate impulses, because sometimes it just feels like way too much. But the good news is that compassion does have boundaries. Compassion does not require one to allow themselves to be abused or taken advantage of. In fact, compassion really only works when there are good boundaries. Just like in the story today, compassion requires that we have compassion towards ourselves as well. Otherwise, we can disguise things like enabling and as compassion, or coercive and controlling behaviors as compassion when they are really not compassion at all. So I thought I'd share with you the text of the Charter for Compassion. It's not very long. It's online at charterforcompassion.org, and it's a document that you can actually, as an individual, sign on to. So here it is. The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religions, religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions, calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves. Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures, to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there, and to honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being, treating everybody without exception with absolute justice, equity, and respect. It is also necessary in both public and private life to refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain, to act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest, to impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody, and to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies, is a denial of our common humanity. We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately and that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion. We therefore call upon all people to restore compassion to the center of morality and religion, to return to the ancient principle that any interpretation of Scripture that breeds violence, hatred, or disdain is illegitimate, to ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information about other traditions, religions, and cultures, to encourage a positive appreciation of cultural and religious diversity, to cultivate an informed empathy with the suffering of all human beings, even those regarded as enemies. We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world. Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness, compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries. Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential to human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity. It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable to the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community. The end. All right. That's a lot, but it's good stuff, isn't it? And I think it's pretty UU compatible, right? A lot of our key words are in there. But yeah, there's that one part of the charter that is really challenging for me in particular. It's not that I disagree with it. It's just that it's such a difficult task. That clause about not inflicting pain through what you say, not speaking violently or speaking or spitefully, not inciting hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies. Because even just the most casual remark of denigration, it can go viral. You know, it's the power of our words is much more powerful than what we actually think. And that not denigrating, I mean, that's a really high level of spiritual development, isn't it? I mean, I think for me and I think for others, it's hard to have compassion for people we see as having hurt us, or caused us to suffer. I mean, I find it to be a really hard sticking point. And venting grievances, especially when they involve a particular person you have the grievance with, that is just so gratifying, isn't it? You can call the habit of denigrating, you can informally call it trash talking, and it's actually kind of like a form of addiction. We actually get a buzz when we sound off about things and people that displease us. Yet, compassion expects us to break that addiction. It expects more. And fortunately, there's a 12-step book to help you get over that addiction. There's not enough time today to go into the 12 steps to a compassionate life, but I'll just give a quick run through of the 12 steps, just in case you're curious. The first step is to learn about compassion, and we're off to a good start here today. Step 2, look at your own world. 3, compassion for yourself. 4, empathy. 5, mindfulness. 6, action. 7, how little we know. 8, how should we speak to one another? 9, concern for everybody. 10, knowledge. 11, recognition. And 12 is love your enemies. She saved the hardest one for last. And yet many folks out there will say, why bother with this compassion stuff? What is in it for me? My own suffering is bad enough. Why should I try and feel the suffering of everybody else? And what if they brought on that suffering themselves? Compassion is worth practicing because it's ultimately in everyone's best interest, because we are all so connected. The world is connected digitally, economically, financially, and environmentally. And how we treat people in one place, as individuals, as communities, as nations, it does have an impact on us, and especially how we, in turn, are treated. That's why we need to practice compassion, to suffer with, and take time to feel the pain of others. Now, not to the degree that we are pulled into the depths of despair or are unable to function in our lives. That is not particularly helpful. But even short emotional visits into the suffering others can be transformational, bringing us back for our lives we live that are pretty desensitized to a lot of things going on around us, moving us from as injustice seeking, moving us from self-righteous anger to a true empathy regarding the tragic conditions of a large portion of the world and its people. What we do does affect everyone, no matter how different from us or how far away from us. We can no longer afford to pretend that we are apart, a distance from the suffering that is felt in other parts of the world, or even just in the neighborhood down the street. It's easy to take that remote and click right past it, but compassion calls us to sit with it and feel it, and then, hopefully, do something about it. When Karen Armstrong addressed the UUA General Assembly a number of years ago, she said, "Why shouldn't the UUs come forward and spread compassion throughout the world?" And of course, people cheered. I like the idea. You probably like that idea too. Compassion, like putting love in the center, is a faithful response to our inherent interconnectedness. It's an acknowledgement that we are in this great web together and that separateness is only an illusion. So today, there are more than 100 towns and communities in numerous countries throughout the world that have signed on with the Charter of Compassion to be certified compassionate communities. I think Houston, Texas, Austin, Texas have signed on. I think the whole state of California is a compassionate state. None in South Carolina that I could find. I didn't mean it like that, sorry. The compassion ethic, it provides a common ground from which decisions can be made. When compassion is brought up to the fore, it's no longer, in communities, it's no longer all about money and politics. And compassion is really not political, and compassion is not inherently adversarial. Compassion is grounded in religion, all religions, and ethics. It can work across the aisle. When compassion is moved up in the list of values and not allowed to be forgotten or swept aside, things must inevitably change. And it's really, really hard for most politicians to take an anti-compassion stance, at least in public. I'll end today with a brief quote from Karen Armstrong. "Look into your own heart. Discover what it is that gives you pain, and then refuse under any circumstance whatsoever to inflict that pain on anyone else. As we part today, I ask you to think about the small, simple steps you can take to live a more compassionate life. That's where it all begins. May it be so, and blessed be." All right, it's time to sing again. We're going to sing Answering the Call of Love. And if you look at our teal hymnal, you'll see it has different words. But we as a denomination like to change things, so we made them better by changing them from Standing on the Side of Love to Answering the Call of Love. That's why the words in your book will not match the words on the screen. Let's sing the words on the screen, okay? Please rise in body or spirit.
please join me by saying the words in your order of service as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words today are from Alice Walker. You know, what are hearts for? Hearts are there to be broken, and I say that because that seems to be just part of what happens with hearts. I mean, mine has been broken so many times that I've lost count, but it just seems to be broken open more and more and more, and it just gets bigger. In fact, I was saying to my therapist not long ago, you know, my heart by now feels open like a suitcase. It feels like it just sort of dropped open, you know, like how a big suitcase just falls open. It feels like that. Instead of that feeling of having a thorn through your heart, that feeling Pema Chodron talks about in Tonglen meditation, you have a sense of openness as if the wind could blow through it. And that's the way I'm used to my heart feeling, the feeling of the heart being so open that the wind blows through it. Dear ones, go in peace, return in love, and blessed be.